Um, Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chief Penn,
Did you freeze?
I think you froze.
Okay. I was like, is he thinking? Tyrone, I don't, or Chair Walker. I don't know if you can, let me text. Oh, he's connecting on iPhone.
Okay, here he is. But you're muted on the phone.
You're on mute on the phone. I know on the phone it's hard to find that button to unmute. You know, it's still muted though.
Hang on. Okay. All right. I was gonna ask about the timing of the meeting because there are two topics and they seem relatively brief because your first topic is really discussing the timeline, which is important. I actually was thinking about this, like this is my first full year on the board. So I was kind of like, I wonder how they do that planning process. Well, here we go. We got it. We'll see it. So I'm wondering, is this a meeting that's gonna last like an hour?
I'm kind of hoping for 30 minutes personally, but we'll see.
Okay, then because I'm not gonna fight you on this one because it's a holiday. My mind's already kind of like, why are we meeting on Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day for those who feel trouble and All right. My other computer is crashing, so I had the phone as a backup today. The computer has come back up, and I may rejoin you there shortly.
Okay.
All right.
And in the meantime, I know Jahira, Miss Escribano said she could not make it, and I'm sending Francoise. It looks like she's having trouble with the link. So we'll give it a minute for her to.
Okay.
The link.
All right.
If I can, oh, there it goes.
Okay. I've got to find a way to keep myself up there. Okay. With the phone. She kind of love it. Yeah, you got to take the 30-minute meetings when you can get them.
Yeah, they're kind of rare. So
yeah, I would certainly agree. Budget stuff tends can take some time. And,
yeah, we're still a few months away from those kind of meetings yet. So
yes, but I want you to know that I've had my 4-week edunomics training, so I know okay. I don't officially know enough to be dangerous. I don't if I start asking like what is the per pupil cost of these initiatives, then you will know where it's come from.
I understand.
And let me quickly, sorry, Chairman Walker. Briefly, we initially had, just FYI, the adult ed grants that we were receiving. But then we talked to Dr. Gordon on Friday, and there was something with the state. There was two things going on with the state that they haven't gotten in, as well as she wanted to make sure that they were prepared. So we are gonna move it to the next meeting. And I did repost the agenda. But Mr. Morris, I think he did not get the message today. So thank you for joining. So sorry to have you come.
No worries.
I was wondering why he was on because I it looked really light, so I was like, "Oh, we're gonna have a brief."
And but thank you for joining, and so now I know you're going to be prepared for next month.
Yeah. So should I drop? I mean, it's very nice to meet everybody, but I guess I'll be joining you again next meeting.
Right.
Correct.
Pull the parachute and exit while you can.
All right. All right, everybody. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
We're going to try that one more time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Francoise. and Board Member Brody, who's out there somewhere too.
Good morning.
Morning.
I can get on this way. All right, I'm gonna try to bounce back on. So, let me- So, I thought I could work that out.
Um,
Okay, is that better?
Much.
All right, that's fine. I'll keep the phone as a backup, but I can't leave them on both at the same time. And okay, so the meeting is a little smaller too, because I without the other budgetary issues, Christina, I think our attendance list is smaller because there wasn't a pretty expansive list before, but you said the contract renewal stuff is off, so all those people are also not on. So do we have our population now for the meeting, or are there more?
yeah, the only one I haven't heard from is Miss Oliver, so I will text her to see if she's joining.
Mhm.
And Ms. Escorbano told me just this morning she cannot attend.
Right. I think that's okay. So let me take a second to pull up our agenda.
She may be off with Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll see.
So if we haven't officially got started, Chief Penn, that the budget that we're reviewing through August, is that closing out the prior year, or I guess I should already know this, but does the new year start in July, or is that August financials?
No, the
old
new year
tax for the
starts.
prior.
Yeah, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th.
Okay, so this is part of this year, technically, the thing you'll be
That's right.
reviewing. That's why I was
That's right.
thinking. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a reason to look at that. All right.
Yeah.
So are we ready? Thank you. Good morning. I'm Board Member Tyrone Walker, and I am Chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. I welcome those of us here in attendance and those listening through Facebook and other platforms to our proceedings this morning. And this morning we have a fairly brief agenda. We will be reviewing the budget planning process for the upcoming academic year, as well as looking at the financials for the initial kickoff of this calendar year academically. And with that, I will be welcoming my board members who are in attendance, Board Member Brody and Board Member Darrell Ledger. And let me hand the agenda to Chief Penn, who will be walking us through the planning process and potentially the financials as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christine, are you able to pull up the agenda? If not, I can, sorry, not the agenda, the timeline. Thank you. Well, first off, I apologize for the confusion in the titling on the page. This is in fact the discussion of the 23-24 budget development timeline. And Christina, I'll fix this before it goes to the full board. The timeline you see in front of you is actually very similar to what we had done for the 22-23 budget. In some respects, it works backwards from the Board of Ed meeting in February, which for 2023 will be on February 21st. But effectively, this is a little bit over a 4-month process for us, starting with estimates around our enrollments and our projections around enrollments that are going to get released to the central office departments and schools at the end of this month. We're going to talk to what the community, particularly the school governance councils, at the end of October, sort of around what our budget process is and around our priorities for the 23-24 year. We'll make sure that the school governance councils have access to training within our Allaview tool as well. And you'll notice that we're going to do internal training on Allaview for primarily new staff or people that have changed roles in the prior year, roughly another week out on the 19th. We then have work at the school level for about the month of November. And we've asked that they turn in their initial budgets to us by the end of November, which then tees up both the school leadership within central office and my staff a chance to go through that. We'll have a second opportunity for community engagement around December 6th, looking for the public's feedback on budget priorities and where they think our spending should head for the upcoming year. And that'll be important to gather that feedback, particularly because we're going to be teeing up what is the last year of ESSER funding as part of this process. If you remember, the final ESSER grant expires on September 30th, 2024. So all of our funds in that grant need to be encumbered or spent by that date. We'll do cross-functional reviews internally in mid-December, and those cross-functional reviews are actually very important in the sense that we look to deconflict things, we look for additional needs from special education and the related services, we look for TESOL and specialized populations growth where there may be additional need. So you may remember last year we talked about having the equity budget process that kind of aligned resources, but then we made additional tweaks where we felt that there were specialized needs within the buildings. Those cross-functional reviews drive a lot of that, where we have various functional leaders around the district who will then weigh in on, well, no, we do need another special education teacher here, or we need another TESOL in this building, just to make sure that those needs are getting met. We'll talk about strategic investments and disinvestments as a cabinet mid-December. Again, I think that's going to be a very important discussion because we have to look at sustainability coming out of the ESSER grants. And in addition, if there's anything that we want to stop doing that we've been doing, that where we find that we're not getting the results that we anticipated. My team will then go through a final review and any kind of error correction leading up to around the Christmas holiday. We'll start incorporating everything into Allaview with a look to be done with that by December 23rd. Over that break week, I'll be handling getting the first draft of the presentation, of the PowerPoint presentation ready for the superintendent. We'll look to share that with her immediately after the new year. Any kind of revisions that she may have or changes in priorities that she may have would get done by July 8th. We then present another draft of the budget to the Finance Committee on January 9th, our meeting is scheduled for that day. So I would probably anticipate a slightly longer meeting in that session. I got to double check the dates on that because I'm pretty sure the budget workshop is teed up for January 10th. I think as we did last year, the focus of that meeting will be on the budget. We're going to reincorporate revisions that come out of those budget discussions in mid-January. We'll do the required public hearing. It's a requirement in the state that we do that, but more importantly, it's also to get a last look at community feedback on the budget in late January. And then leading up to, as I said at the beginning, Finance Committee review and a Board of Ed adoption on February 21st. This will be my second, I guess, full year with you developing the budget. And I think coming out of last year, I've got a better sense of the exhibits that were requested that were not initially presented. So I've kept a log of all those, so I know what to produce. So I'm kind of hoping for a little bit more smooth process in terms of the presentation of materials. Now that I know that's what's been requested historically. Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there in case there's questions or comments on the timeline.
Thank you, Chief Penn. And to my board members, are there questions? I have a couple, but I'll wait until others have had an opportunity. Board Member Brody or Board Member Darastel Ledger.
Good morning. I'll ask because I know it's been a topic of conversation previously that we moved our budget timeline up tremendously. And if he could speak to that, that would be great.
Sure thing. You know, it's the same issue as last year. What we're attempting to do is be able to go out during peak college hiring season, which is the spring semester for all the graduating anticipated teachers with an unconditional offer. If we don't have an approved budget by the time offer letters are going out, the offer letter has to say that it's dependent on having an approved budget. And that puts us at a bit of a competitive disadvantage versus other districts that don't have to do that. So in other words, if a candidate was looking at two different offers that are substantially equal, one of which is still pending a budget approval, we feel that it would put us at a competitive disadvantage to have that label on the offer. And so similar to the decision that was made last year, we wanted to move up this budgetary timeline so that in the March and April peak hiring season for college graduates, we had the ability to go out with an unqualified offer to them.
I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Board Member.
So I know at some point in time, I asked at least, what did that yield us? I don't think it yielded us anything. And we said, oh, we spoke to the fact that, or blamed it on, this is, in the market right now. I don't think you're able, Mr. Penn, to speak to that because you're not talent management. So I don't think the question is for you, but I will be interested in knowing now that we're at this point in time and this, timeline is being presented. I don't know if Ms. Curtis would be the one to speak to that, to give us, because one year we moved it back, then another year we moved it further back. So what is that yielding us?
Yeah, I would agree. I would probably defer to Dr. Curtis on that, but I will take that question back to her.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Yes, this is Board Member Darastel Ledger. Good morning. My question is, and it may be similar to Ms. Brody. I'm not exactly sure because I didn't hear her question that well. It's around minority teacher recruitment and retention, or minority teacher recruitment. Is there funds set aside or dedicated to going to the HBCUs to recruit Black teachers?
Well, remember, this is the 23-24 budget development we're talking about. So the budget hasn't even been created yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Can I follow up on Ms. Darastel Ledger's question?
Yes, you may.
So was there a line item last school year for that?
Specifically related to that, not that I recall. There's a large pool of money that's set aside specifically for recruitment. And it's up to Chief Curtis to decide how that money gets spent and in the best way possible.
So I guess that's another question for Dr. Curtis. Was there actually a line item last year, or exactly what was done for minority teacher recruitment? I know at our workshop, we did discuss, she said something to the fact that she would be coming to us specifically to ask for some marketing around that. I can't recall exactly, but if it is a fact that there was not a line item for that, we need to be told there was not. And because sometimes we dance around the question, and we've been asking this question, probably it's been a question, at least from the first year that I was a board member, it has always been asked a question for at least the last 5 years. So if there is no efforts being, we just need to know exactly what they are, even if we have to say they're zero. So I think that's something that should just be said, and let's talk about it instead of us saying, oh, we're going to do that. Oh, we're thinking about that. Oh, we need market. What have we done? If it's zero, let's say it's zero, so we know where we are and where we're going. Thank you.
So if there aren't further questions, then I will insert, I guess, a few questions. And Chief Penn, I guess one of mine has been shaped by the commentary. I don't know what has been the total history, but I tend to place things like this in what I would call an annualized planning process. And what I'm seeing here is a process that is essentially like 4.5 months long. It does achieve what you're trying to achieve, but what I guess my question is there an opportunity to expand this and start this earlier if we're going to stay with the rationale that we need to have a budget that's ready to go by early January, which is what this is currently saying? To me, annualized planning process then would say we would start this spring of the previous year, or maybe, second quarter of the previous year, to begin to unearth some of the questions and whatnot. But what's your thinking about putting this in more in an annualized planning process versus this kind of compressed process?
Well, I mean, to me, this is the annualized process. So to better answer your question, we don't typically start a budgetary process until we know with some definite certainty what our October 1st enrollment is in a given year. And obviously we don't have that until after October 1st. And a lot of that is because so much of the cost is driven by how many students do we have? How many students did we lose from the prior year? How many of those students have additional needs like special education, or they're English language learners, or some other factor that plays into that we need to know about in terms of determining how these resources get set up and properly allocated. So I don't know how much earlier we can embed this into our annual process. And frankly, we're not even closing out the prior year and reporting on it until August 31st. So I'm not sure where we'd be trying to maintain both an opening of a budget planning for the following fiscal year as we're trying to close out 2 years prior to that.
I would agree. So I guess the follow-up would be then the struggle to get it. Board Member Brody's question. I would agree with you that, to me, starting October does not offend me. It's that, as I would think about it, right, normally, if the budget process, I said, went until deep April, then to a certain degree, Ms. Brody would be able to ask Chief Curtis, right, what did you do this past recruitment season? What did you spend money on? And use that as inputs to figure out what adjustments we need to make to the upcoming year's budget. And so with the way we currently have it structured, that's not gonna be able to be done. So I guess what I'd ask maybe
Well,
in this
can
current,
can I interrupt you there for a
Yeah.
second?
yeah,
Why wouldn't it, the way it's structured now?
well, we can. So I'm gonna ask you, so in this way, can we insert that kind of discussion in the process and she'd bring maybe her work from 2022? Should she bring work from this year?
Yeah.
And that would be brought forward to answer the question. I don't know if it's clearly spiked out. So I would say, is there a line where we look at kind of those programmatic types of things like spending on recruitment or spending on other factors? Because I would have a question on another area. What do you
To
think?
me,
Ken?
the best place to do that in the budget is the workshop mid-January. Because then
Okay.
you're still a month out from adopting the budget. And in particular, if you know the kind of questions you want to ask, and it sounds like there's some perennial ones that we're discussing here today,
Mhm.
it would give us the opportunity to have the chiefs prepare answers for that and have them ready to go at that meeting.
Okay.
Rather than to say it gets asked at that workshop and then we have to take time to get back to you.
That we can be in agreement on that yes, I think that's a plan. And as we look through your timeline, we could insert, here's questions we would want to have answered, the programmatic questions. Let me yield the floor to Board Member Darcel Ledger, and then maybe I'd have one final question. Yes.
Thank you so much. So my question is, since there is I guess, a pool of money that is dedicated to recruitment, that Dr. Curtis is, I don't want to say handling, but is that money already dedicated or allocated? Are there line items, or is all that money that's still there? Is there still funds there? Is that money accounted for, or is there room for minority teacher recruitment?
There's a pretty substantial amount of money that we were using for recruitment underneath our ESSER budgets, I know for sure. And I know there's still a pretty significant amount of money in those lines at this point.
So would it be safe to say we should reach out to Dr. Curtis to perhaps use some of that money that's perhaps left over for minority teacher recruitment at this time?
We could certainly ask her the question. What I can't answer for her is, where do we stand in terms of timeline, right? So as I think about it, recruiting from a HBCU should have roughly the same team timeline that we would have recruiting out of Central or UConn or a Connecticut college, right? So I think that the question is what's teed up in terms of planning for the recruitment cycle for the spring in those HBCUs.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chief Finn, if I can have a final question. There are two things I want to consider. Maybe this is my economics training now coming to bear.
Okay.
We hear two things a lot, which is there are a lot of tech tools and other technology-enabled items that we're budgeting across the year. I'd want to know in this process if we could find a way to tee up, like, here's all the technology-enabled stuff that we're paying for, and to be able to kind of have a way where we could see it, some way, and then look at how much we're paying for in total and what areas are they covering. Do we have gaps? Are there things we should be thinking about or focusing on? Or to your point, are there things that are duplicative and maybe we could combine and get rid of something that's old or something that's been around for a while or not being used very much? To me, this would seem to be an opportunity to look at that. The other one I would want to look at is this continuing thing about our consulting contracts. An opportunity to at least kind of have them spread out, look at them in total, see what they're covering, and then again, bring that. So those are things I'm asking you. I don't know how to get into the timeline. I will grant you that probably we can make a final decision at it in that January timeframe, but I would think we need to start, looking at it in the fall or getting at least some idea of these, because I want them to go through their committees as well, so people can talk about their value, not just the cost that we're incurring. Does that make sense? You got some ideas about how to pull that off?
Yeah, I guess I just want to ask a clarifying question. There's the stuff that we put in people's hands, hardware, right? Laptop, iPad, whatever it is. And then there's the stuff that runs on all that.
Yes.
And do you think the conversation is mostly focused on the software side or focused on the hardware side?
For me, I'm really thinking more on software. I want to touch on the hardware, but this is really more, we vote on stuff and someone inevitably will say, we already have that, or we don't use that. And so somehow let's assess that this would be a time to maybe assess that. With the hardware piece, to me, the discussion is more of, how big a bucket do we need? Like, how many computers do we have? I'd rather have a discussion around, do we have plans around sustainability and maintainability, and how's that being funded, the recurring and ongoing costs? That would be an interesting discussion to have here for budgeting purposes.
Yeah. You're right, in the sense that we had a lot of money in ESSER that was designed to put a device in every student's hands, right? But what's the sustainability of that? I know that there is a tech replacement plan, i.e., you got to buy a certain number of laptops each year for sustainability. But,
Correct.
When our ESSER funds run out on that, what does that plan look like? One of the things that we do as part of the cycle, and I know we did it last year, is we actually printed out for the cabinet members all of the software packages that we buy, with the intent of reviewing it and saying, is there anything on here we don't need anymore? And I think there was one thing we took off and kept the rest, but that is part of the annual process to have internally a review of what are we spending our money on in terms of software? And, is it yielding us the results that we want? And if not, do we disinvest off that?
Thank you. And thank you for Chief Penn for fielding these questions. And so you've made it exactly what I was suggesting. In my mind, if we can get that earlier in the process, 'cause I know you touched us a few times, my sense is that if I could get that like in the November timeframe, then maybe I have time to shop around to stakeholders, school level folks, maybe folks in the community, to say, because there's also tools that parents are using, and do they find them to be useful and things of that nature, and then maybe come back with some intelligent responses for you in January. The only action that I would say here for me is if there's a way to get what you have here on some kind of calendar type of basis, something that's like on a calendar where I can kind of like hand it out and I can kind of see it on a more visual timeline, if you know what I'm saying. Is that possible to do?
Yeah. Are you thinking something more in the terms of like a traditional calendar, or something more like a swim lanes project management calendar?
Either one, but more, I guess more on a maybe even regular calendar. So I know to tell people like, hey, community, you got to get your feedback to me by this time frame. And I need to talk to people, because the value of this is people can give you timely feedback and not have everybody run to you in January with their thoughts. And it may not be timely.
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure that out for you.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Board Member Brody.
Do we have a date as to when teachers with seniority is able to like the deadline by which they say I'm choosing this job or I'm staying here. Do we know that date right offhand?
I apologize, not off the top of my head. I could picture it in the collective bargaining agreement, but I will follow up and get that to you.
Okay, because I'm thinking that may have been something to consider when the teacher contract was being negotiated, because if that does not line up with this process, I'm trying to understand how we're going to be. So what day do you need to retire? What day do you need to say I'm taking this job, so I know when another job is actually available? Because if you're going out and you don't have those things, and we're saying we're shifting this budget all because we want to get out there and recruit, how can, like, who's being offered what when you don't know who's retiring and who has taken a position that is really not open? So that, I think, this budget question, I think, and I know a lot of these questions are for Dr. Curtis, but I'm hoping that's considered, because if it wasn't, we don't know what we really have to offer.
Christina just reminded me that there's an annual posting that's specific to the contract that she thinks is somewhere in the February-March timeframe, and I think it's in that range too. But there was also something that Dr. Curtis talked about. I know it was like a survey of intent that I think went on before that, roughly in the January timeframe. It's not formal, and I get that, but it was an indication of people who were contemplating leaving, contemplating retiring, and things of that nature. And you know, we've started looking internally at how do we better utilize the data that we already have on the amount of time that teachers have been in district and the amount of time that they their age, frankly. And the reason we do that is under the retirement practices for TRB, Teachers Retirement Board, rule of 80 is kind of like the magic number. If you have a combination of age and service that gets you to 80, you've got effectively what becomes full retirement. So we've started looking at some of that data too, to say, okay, if every teacher who was rule of 80 in a given year retired, what would that mean for us? And then you can build that out sort of on a bar chart going forward by years to see what's my turnover to look like just in terms of retirements that we might expect as a result of that. But we'll follow back up with you on that annual posting date. I can picture it, but I don't remember what it is.
Okay, thank you, because that would mean a lot to me, as far as like what we're saying, our process, why we're making it earlier, and I'm not, because earlier means less time for board members to engage community. It just shortens our time. But if we're saying this is what is best, we have to have some data that makes sense for it. And I'm hoping we didn't miss the opportunity in our negotiations that makes this really make sense for the recruitment part, which is so heavily talked about as to why we push this budget back and back. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Darcel Ledger.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to put out there is that with regards to the surveys that will, you know, pretty much put feelers out there to see who's returning, who's thinking of leaving, who's definitely leaving or retiring. It's not always reliable, and for the reason of benefits. There are teachers who they know that they're leaving, but will not say that they're leaving until the very last minute because they want to maximize their benefits, their health insurance. And also, if some teachers are leaving, they may not necessarily, it depends, not all, but some will say that they're not leaving. And they'll leave at the last minute as well because their contract for the, you know, for the new job may not start until, you know, say August 1st or August, sometime in August. So when that starts in August, or August 20 or something like that. And when it starts in August, that's when their health benefits will kick in. So that's something that we need to consider as well. And that's what I wanted to share. So also one more thing. So I feel that it's important that we just not over recruit, but just continue to recruit as though we need to replace almost every position so that we don't have that deficit.
Yeah, I don't think the teacher posting ever comes down off our website. I think that one's sort of permanently enshrined on there for that reason. I agree with you.
So, thank you, Board Member Ledger. I'm going to try to wrap up a couple actions here. A takeaway that I see here is inviting Dr. Curtis. I think we should invite her to one of these meetings here in the fall to really lay out her vision for recruitment. I think hearing it from her firsthand would be helpful for this overall process. And so, Christina, if we take an action to invite Dr. Curtis, I don't know when it would work on her calendar, but maybe November or worse, December, to have her come in and really share, and bring some data. Because what I'm hearing is it sounds like speed of being able to respond to potential applicants and being able to have definitive information, it sounds as if it's very valuable. And so it'd be great to have Dr. Curtis really come with the information that would say, this is important, it's critical, here's the benefits, and really it'd be helpful. So I'll see that as an action. And
I did write that down. The other possibility, I know we had a workshop on this. I don't know if that answer wasn't fully satisfied. Apparently not, obviously not. So yeah, a finance.
yeah. It's not that
learning committee. Yeah, I think just to make sure, because finance, we want to keep it, make sure that, but I see your point. So, well, Tyrone, Mr. Walker, we can talk offline as to the best way.
Yes, and you're correct. It may go through another committee to get here. I think I'm trying to keep this at a financial basis in the sense of this is a moving target. I was not dissatisfied with what Dr. Curtis said, but if she has more relevant information to say, hey, we went out and we lost 4 applicants because we couldn't give them a definitive answer quickly. If there's real information that says, wow, we would have had some real benefit if we had the ability to give a definitive answer, if we had this budget right in our hands, that kind of information would be helpful if she has the time to do that kind of analysis. But that's what I'm saying. I don't want to get into, the elements of non-finance. Okay. So, if there aren't any other issues, thank you, Chief Penn, for sharing this. This became a more lively conversation than I may have anticipated, but it was actually rich and good, and I think we gained something from having this conversation now.
Alrighty.
So I want to, thanks. I'm going to keep you here and ask if you will move the topic 2, which is the financials.
Yeah.
And maybe this will be
thanks, Christina. Okay. Very quickly, financials through August of this year. So we are 2 months into the new fiscal year for 22-23. Spending, as you might recall, is typically very light in July and August. Through those 2 months, we had only spent about $17 million because remember, at that point, teachers aren't back, so we're not really at the full load of payroll. We encumbered about $7.5 million, bringing the total we have encumbered to 21 and change. Most of that was in instructional improvements, professional services, transportation. all of which were renewals, new contracts, things of that nature. So very typical work for the August timeframe. As we do note, we expect expenses will tick up quite a bit in September as all the folks that are on 10-month payrolls come back to school. But things are very much on track with our budget. The two things that we're monitoring fairly closely right now is increased expenses at MHIS. Those are mostly to prevent future cyber attacks or prevent them as best as we can. Those are recommendations that came out of their cybersecurity audit after the breach that took place, I want to say about 18 months ago. I may have the time frame a little bit wrong, but it's roughly that. And then we also have some roof repairs that were unexpected at Moylan that we're prioritizing actually first on things we're looking at. We should be able to release those funds over to the facilities folks this week so that they can schedule the repairs. So it's unfortunate that we got to spend that money in advance of when I think that building is scheduled to get completely redone in about 3 years, I want to say, somewhere in that time frame. But it's at the point of condition that we need to do something because it's not good for the kids or the staff to be in there with the level of damage to the roof that's there right now. So we're going to make that happen this week.
Thank you, Chief Penn. I didn't know if there were any highlights you wanted to point out. The only question I had based on your comments, encumbrances, is that equivalent to like accounts payable, or how you, where you?
It eventually becomes accounts payable. So it's once it becomes a purchase order, that for us is equivalent to a legal commitment. So that's when we talk about the funds being encumbered. So it's pulled out of that respective budget line to make sure that we don't double up and use it for those funds for something else. And then obviously, once we receive the materials and get invoiced, that'll flip to accounts payable. And then we pay the invoices against the open purchase orders to close them out.
Okay. So, all right. So in this case, encumbrances means that you're kind of earmarking the money for right now.
Exactly. Earmarking is a great term to use, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions among the board members? Board member Brody?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question because we do still have central office folks on Washington Street. Is that correct?
Washington Street.
Are they temporarily there because of the Buckley project?
Ms. Brody, you stumped me. I'm trying to think who we would have over on Washington Street.
Usually was, right, and adult ed were. No, I don't.
Adult ed moved recently.
Right.
I'm trying to recall which street they're on now, but Washington doesn't ring a bell.
If I can jump in briefly, adult ed, as I know it, is co-located next to Global Communication Academy. I can't think of that street. 1 block over from Henry is where adult ed is now, correct?
Yeah, they used to be. This used to be their building.
Right. Just to travel.
Yeah. So before the reconfiguration, that was adult ed, then Zulu was there, but with the DME, they moved, and some people still kind of refer to it as the adult ed building, but we never gave up the building, so it was swing space. But I was made aware, or not, maybe it's just a rumor, that we had, because of the construction going on at Buckley and central office occupying that space. And it's been times we've been on, meetings and we hear banging in the background when someone's presenting from from the team, right? So it didn't seem strange that someone would say folks were moved, in that swing space. But I'm just trying to be reassured here that our central office will be on the Buckley campus. When all is said and done, that will be the location, and Washington Street will not be used for that purpose when everyone can be in their respective places.
Ms. Brody, didn't we give that building back to the city, or am I thinking of another?
It came up because some city folks called me, and I'm like, these people never call me and ask me a question. Like, it was some poking around, and I was like, what's up with that building? So I don't ever remember voting to turn it back over. That's why I'm thinking it wasn't, because we would have to do a formal vote, right? And I don't remember that.
I think we did. Yes, we did in January of 2021. I'm looking it up. Yep, to
We
relate.
turned-
We did. It was back to the city of Hartford, so it might be their staff.
That's there, but it's not our Board of Ed staff that was hearing banging in the background at Buckley. Because I mean, it actually was said publicly, and I was like, I think we would know that.
Yeah, that's news to me.
Okay.
But I will triple check for you and get back.
But it would be helpful for us to know what those, like, what are swing spaces, just to, because I know we move around a lot, but sometimes it could get lost that we don't know, like, because I ride by Milner School every day, the Milner building, the old Milner building on Vine Street, and we're like, I say, oh, I see all those cars parking. I have to remember, because it's always moving parts, right?
Mm-hmm. So I will ask Chief Davis Gooch to follow up on that one.
Thank you.
Are there other questions related to the budget, the first quarter? Well, not first quarter, but
Almost.
I want to cut, well, the first 2 months of the academic year. Well, if not, I appreciate Chief Penn, your team working quickly to find and release funding for Moreland School. I think a roof repair is always an imminent issue, and speed tends to actually be financially beneficial and health-wise as well. So, appreciation to your teams, really getting out there and getting this money quickly. So, do we have any other matters before the committee this morning?
No, I would just point out that there's a second memo. I just want to make sure it all caught your attention, where we are with spending on our ESSER grants. And in particular, the first one that's about to, or actually has already closed out, 9/30/22 is our spending or encumbrance deadline on the first one. You'll see the total that's spent there. The difference between those two numbers is our funds that were allocated to non-public schools, as they had part of those funds as well. So we spent everything that was allocated to us out of that grant within the spending deadline, which is good news. And, we've picked up a little bit on the pace of spend recently, which is also good. Because if you take it down to the total line, we still have about 107 million left to be spent over 2 years. The spending plans that I've seen in terms of reconfiguring the ESSER spend get us to that level within the prescribed time frame. And in particular, now that we've started approving these school level C grants, SEIG, I call it SEIG. I don't know how else you pronounce it really, but those are ones that are designed to move a pretty substantial piece of spending down to the school level and put it at the discretion of what they think they need best, working with their EDSLs, the principals, the staff in the building, and the Office of School Leadership. So those budgets are in the process of being approved right now, and we're starting to see some spending on those fronts as well. So I would characterize sort of the first year of ESSER as a bit of a slow start, but I'm kind of happy with where we are right now in terms of getting the spending ramped back up to a point where I have a much higher level of confidence that we'll go through all the remaining ESSER funds prior to September of 24.
Thank you, Chief Penn. And while there may be some questions,
Mr. Walker, you went on mute.
Thank you, Chief, for telling me. I was gonna say, thank you for presenting this information. I'm open to for questions, but I have a question request to kind of state at this point. I'll take the chair's privilege here. One is, I know we've showed some type of breakdown of spending and where it's gone. Is there a way to show spending that's gone towards, students and families and school level and show that in some kind of way? I just want to be able to address the concern that there's a lot of district spending and people kind of question, does it get down to students, which to me feels like, school level and to family level. Is there a way to look at the spending and see where it's gone and see where it's going to go, and maybe talk about a little bit of timeline, something that I can show as I'm talking to folks in community or they have questions?
I think Chief Penn, did you freeze? I think he may have frozen.
I thought he froze too.
Yeah. But yes, I think he just dropped off.
Yeah, he may come back. So if he
Sure,
comes back,
yes, I'm sure it has been in other presentations, but we will make sure to do that.
if you can summarize it, if you, Christina, because I know it's been presented in some ways, some type of bar chart, but you get these questions periodically when that people want to know, is all the money gets stuck at the district level? And so I would like to, this is a good moment to be able to show where this ESSER fund is going. If Chief Penn comes back on, let's talk about the timeline for the seed grant proposals and approvals. I want to know if SGCs will have any voice about where some of this, money can be spent within their schools, if it's going to be school level decision making.
Okay, he just likely that he got the blue screen of death on his laptop, which is not good. So I don't think he'll be.
Okay, because I've totally gotten that too. So I get it. So can you take that as an action to get that from him, a kind of just a breakdown again of where the money has gone and now where the money is going to go, because we're now starting to accelerate the spend. And then the other thing would be kind of maybe a one-pager about the SEEG grant approval process and whether SGCs or community voices can weigh in on that school level spending, because I would totally like to let folks know at the community level, meeting level, that, hey, this is coming. And if you want to have a voice, here's the timeline and here's how you can get involved if you want to.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I was going to say, Chief. Yeah.
Could we possibly consider having another, like how we see it presented here? Could we have a column that says the balance, like for ESSER 1 CARES Act, it says what the change is, total spent account. Could we have a balance, like to date, this is the amount left?
Balance.
Instead of having to calculate the difference for each category? Like if we could see it there, that would be great.
Easy to digest, easy to read. You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good point, Board Member Brody. Yeah.
And he just like that they are working on a revised reporting for ESSER that tracks closer to the initiative level as well. So that's
what I was
on it. But yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
If we can take that, because that it will help to answer the question of where the money's actually going. That'd be great to have that. That's it for me. If there aren't other questions, we've lost our principal speaker here for the day. So I am open to motions to adjourn, or will take the privilege to adjourn on behalf of my fellow board members, and thank everyone for attending and listening in and participating. And with that, I will give you back your time and thank you for your support and attendance, my fellow board members. And Christina.